Hello all, I hope you are having a fantastic day. My name is Reggie and today I will be sharing with you a Top 5 Wednesday. If you don't know, Top 5 Wednesday is a weekly video prompt that was created by Lainey over at Ginger Reads Lainey, but is now being hosted by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. As always, I will link Lainey and Sam's channels in the eye and down below, and I will also link the Goodreads group down below in case you are looking at future topics and would like to join. This week's topic really struck a chord with me. I was actually thinking about this topic before I even looked at what the topics for Top 5 Wednesday were, because recently I've read a couple of books that really just struck me as so powerful that I think they're going to be classics in the future, and I haven't told you what the topic is, but the topic this week for Top 5 Wednesday is books that you think will one day be classics. So there are a lot of books that could be on this list, and there are a lot of books that I think are future classics, but I am going to focus this video on the top 5 YA books I think will be classics one day. Okay, that's a long way of saying this is the top 5 YA books that I think are future classics. So I'm not going to put Harry Potter on this list. I am indeed one of those people who would already consider Harry Potter to be classic, which is why I'm not putting it on the list. My number 5 book on this list is almost as much of a duh as Harry Potter. I just think this is on its way to becoming a classic instead of currently a classic. I would consider Harry Potter already classic. But number 5 is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. You know what this book is. Dystopian and basically the start of YA dystopian. YA dystopian, not dystopian in general. Of course, dystopian has been around forever. But The Hunger Games, I think, will be a classic with good reason. It's already being read by a lot of people in school. I have seen countless teacher friends teach this to their middle school, high school aged students. I think there are really strong messages within this book, and I think there are really strong themes within this book, and I think those are the kind of essentials to classic are ideas and themes that really get you thinking and really expand your worldview. But I do think this is probably like the shoo-in on the list. Let me know what you think. Maybe you don't think it's a shoo-in. Why not? All right, moving on to book 4. Book number 4 on this list is The Fault in Our Stars by Joan Green. I think this is like one of those bestsellers that are bestsellers for a reason. This is a book that really gets you thinking about things you don't think about every day and really expands your worldview. Things that I've already mentioned are, in my opinion, future classics. I think the writing is very beautiful. John Green's writing is not for everyone, but I absolutely adore it. I love his really long extended metaphors, his lines that are at the beginning of the chapter that don't pay off until the end of the chapter. You don't think anything of them, but they turn into this chapter-long metaphor. I just really like that his like little lines have huge payoff. His writing style, especially in this book, is just definitely my kind of writing style. I know it's not for everyone. Definitely think this is the kind of book that reads easy, but also reads complexly in terms of thoughts. It's not like a complex book, but it's the kind of book that really gets you thinking outside of your normal everyday life. I also think that so many people have read this book that it's just going to be something people talk about for a long time. Like, say, when your kids are looking for a book, you might reach for this one, or someone might tell them about this one just because so many people have read it. It definitely has that recommendation quality. I also think this has like a kind of Romeo and Juliet kind of tragedy element to it. I just think it has this tragic, romantic story. I would not compare John Green to William Shakespeare or Hazel and Augustus to Romeo and Juliet, other than they have this tragic love story that I think is very compelling and very interesting and important to read about and talk about and experience. So, book number 4. Coming in at number 3 is another book that I think might be on a lot of people's list because I think it's just so iconic, so classic, even modernly, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a historical fiction that follows a girl during World War II. She is a German citizen, and it's kind of her perspective growing up in this time and what's going on, and it's just very powerful, very strong. I think this is a narrative that needs to be read, and I think it will be read for a long time. I certainly hope so. Again, it gets you thinking and thinking in a viewpoint other than your own, one that you don't read a lot. Common theme within these books, it teaches you a lot about yourself by talking a lot about someone else's experience. It also enlightens us to someone else's experience. It's completely fictional, but it's very important. It's just a beautiful book, but it also is a beautiful commentary and an eye-opening experience, so that's why I have added it to this list. But the next 2 are going to be the ones that I read recently that made me think about this topic a lot, and made me just really have to do this Top 5 Wednesday. The number 2 on this list probably isn't actually going to be a classic, honestly, but I really want it to be. And when I was reading, I was just like, I want everyone forever and ever to read this book. It is The Female Species by Mindy McGinnis. This is a book that talks heavily about rape culture and feminism and the female experience. It's so powerful, so strong, so beautiful. I'm not going to get into a huge amount about it because I do plan on having a review up either later this week or early next week. Number 2 and number 1 book in this list are the next 2 reviews I'm planning on filming, and these books were the 2 of my favorites that I've read this year and 2 of the most important books I've read this year. And I want everyone to read this book for as long as it takes us to get away from rape culture and to get away from the female experience being like this. It's extremely powerful, but it's extremely visceral and jarring and not for everyone. It's very strong and it deals with very hard topics, gruesome topics such as murder. It is very violent. It deals with rape, obviously. There are depictions of animal violence. Our main character is not like hurting animals, but she works at an animal shelter, and then another one of our prospective characters does work as a butcher. So there are some scenes that depict that kind of thing. So it's not necessarily a book for everyone, and for that reason, I don't know if it would necessarily be a classic. Though you think things like The Jungle are classics, and that's pretty gruesome and visceral. So maybe. I definitely think this is the kind of book I want to be a classic. It's making something we see every day a lot more eye-opening. Everything in this book happens all of the time, except for, you know, murder. Even that does happen, but not in the way it's depicted in this book. But it reads like a dystopian in the idea that these things shouldn't be happening, and it's a criticism on them. And for that reason, if this one day turns into a dystopian, if today's time is one day a dystopian time we're living in, or dystopian-esque to our future, then this book will be very important to show what things were really like. But if it's not and things aren't improved, it will be a very good point of reference to see what is wrong with society. And that's also why The Female of Species should be read, to understand what the experience is like. It's putting into words the experiences we feel and experience but don't talk about, or if we do talk about, are hard to explain to other people. So it's very important that young girls get these messages and realize these things aren't okay and don't grow up thinking this is acceptable. I think it is very strongly well written, but I think the ideas and what it presents are way more important, and those are the kinds of things I would hope to be classics one day. And coming at number 1 on this list, I certainly hope is on a lot of people's lists, because when I read this book, my literal first thought was classic. It's already a classic. It needs to be a book people read forever and ever and ever to, if nothing else, understand what the experience was like. I honestly do think this is like the next classic and the book everyone should be reading, not just modernly, but for a long time. This is like To Kill a Mockingbird of the future. Everyone should be reading this at school. Everyone should be reading this outside of school. It's so beautiful, it's so impactful, and it's so important. Hate Give by Angie Thomas is considered to be basically the Black Lives Matter movement book. It is so much more than that, let me say. First of all, this book is incredibly enriching and beautiful and talks about the experience of being a Black teenage girl in America during today's time while weaving in the Black Lives Matter movement aspects, but also without that. She talks a lot about how to balance her life between different aspects and different family members. She goes to a upper to middle class school but lives in a lower class Black community, and those worlds have to be balanced. She talks about being in an interracial relationship. She sees her best friend shot and has to decide if she wants to become the voice and the rallying point of a movement. And I just think this book is so incredibly important. And if you haven't read it yet, get your hands on it. I honestly and truly believe that this will be a classic. This needs to be a classic. Everyone should read this. And it takes you, again, puts you in someone else's shoes and teaches you about another experience. And I think those are the kinds of books I want adolescents and even adults of the future to be reading, people to learn from these situations and to know what it was like. Because especially these 2 books are really showing you what it's like. And that's why they're top in this list for me. But especially The Hate You Give. If that's not a classic, I don't know what is. So these are the 5 books that I think will one day be classics. If they're not one day classics, I think they should be. I think these all kind of take you out of your own life and put you in someone else's shoes and tells you what it's really like, or opens your eyes to an experience. All of these books definitely show you what it's like to be in a certain and specific experience, and I think all of these experiences are super important and super valid. If these aren't future classics, these are the kinds of books that I certainly hope are future classics. And if you participated in Top 5 Wednesday, I would love to see your video. So let me know you have one down in the comment section and I will be sure to watch it. And whether you did a Top 5 Wednesday video or blog post or you didn't, let me know what books you think will be future classics. If you like this video, you should give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, you should definitely do that, because that's like the other best thing you can do. And it always makes my day. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.